Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy show. My name is Hassani.
And I'm Danielle.
And every morning we come to you for about 30 minutes of inspiration for your relationship. So whether you're dating, in a committed courtship, engaged, or married, the Couples Academy show has a place for you to get involved and engage in a powerful conversation. This is Monday. Now, I'm excited about Mondays. Usually people say, well, thank God it's Friday, but we love Mondays because we love what we do. Just came back from a powerful weekend. We were doing a 3-day private marriage intensive with a couple in South Dakota.
From South Dakota.
Yeah. And it was incredible. It was incredible. Like when they first reached out, this relationship was over. Like the husband wasn't trying to hear anything. He was done packing his bags, making plans. Somehow we were able to have some conversations with him to open him up to the opportunity of the possibility of what could be if we went through this experience. And boy, was there such a shift in his heart and in his mind. And so many people who are ready to call it quits, throw in the towel and just give up, if they just take one last chance to restore their relationship, all can go well.
Don't you love it when the light bulb goes off for a couple, that they realize, like, wow, there is hope.
There is.
And for most of us, that's all we need, is some glimmer of hope to hold on to that lets us know that we can not only just get through the next day just to see the same repetitive behavior, but that there actually can be lasting change. And the motivation behind that, right? That actually if I change and if they change and we change, then we can take this to the end, as opposed to calling it quits and rolling the dice. It's a crapshoot who you're gonna end up with, if you're gonna end up with anybody at all. So if we're gonna work this hard, shouldn't we work where we've already dug, in our own backyard and buried so many treasures?
Totally
you know what I
agree.
mean? So it's really amazing when we can see that transition happen in somebody. It's not like everything is resolved in that weekend, but so much gets resolved and it puts you on the course for repair.
It's
so
tremendous
it's
breakthrough, tremendous breakthrough. And so there may be some of you right now that are saying, you know what, I could use something like that. Well, we've got something for you. We have a last chance weekend coming up at the end of this month, January 29th through the 31st. Just go to the link in the description, click on it, find out more about it, because this could be your opportunity to turn things around. Listen, we're gonna get into today's show. We have a question from Kendra, powerful question, and we're going to talk about it. So let's go to that video and see what she has to say.
My close friend has been married for over 5 years, and she says she's stuck in a loveless marriage that she feels trapped in. I've tried talking to her, she's tried counseling, and still no resolve. Hassani and Danielle, I know you've been married for over 15 years. Any advice?
We're Hassani and Danielle Pettiford, founders of Couples Academy, a private practice dedicated to saving marriages around the world.
We're not just recognized authorities on relationships. We're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission: to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships.
This is the Couples Academy show. So we appreciate that question. What a powerful question. And we deal with things like that all the time. And you know what? It's literally right in line with a question that was written in that I want to share with you. This is what it says. It says, I've fallen out of love with my husband and I want to leave, but we have 2 young children. We've been married for 9 years. We have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. I can't help it, but I just don't love him anymore. I was physically attracted to him, but I don't feel any sexual attraction to him at all now. And for the past 3 years, I've tried to avoid intimacy wherever I could. At other times, whenever I couldn't, I just tried to pretend it was okay. It's terrible having intimacy with someone that you don't love. And yet, my husband says that no matter what, he will still love me and will never leave me. I would be selfish, or it would be selfish of me if I just decided to leave, but he wants to work it out. But I felt this way for so long, I don't know what to do. Maybe I would be happier with somebody else. I'm 36, and I know that being lonely being single can be a lonely experience, but I'd rather be lonely than be in a loveless marriage. What do I do?
Wow, this is heartbreaking to hear. And I'm sure that there are many people out here that can resonate with that. It's interesting how we all just love so differently. You know, women love differently than men love, you know. And when I think about her cry for help in this letter, it's indicating to me that she's not feeling the love in the way that she needs to feel it. Now, this isn't an indictment on her husband. We don't know the other side of the story. All we know is her cry for help, right? And I think about how when we were going through some of our worst time, I felt unloved. I still loved him, right? We never actually got to the point where we didn't love each other, but I really didn't like him. I did get to the point where I felt like we weren't connected. I did get to a point where I questioned, was this the right person for me to spend the rest of my life with? And it was because we were speaking completely different languages. When she said she doesn't like to be intimate, or she doesn't feel she can be intimate with him, I think about how she probably isn't being seen, right? When you say, I need to be intimate with you, I need you to see into me. And if I'm not feeling seen or being seen, then now I stop looking. How many couples do you know that they really can't even look each other in the eye? That's how bad it's gotten with intimacy, right? If I look you in the eyes, you actually see into my heart, and it reveals a tremendous amount. So there's a lot of issues there that can be resolved, because I will never forget the turnaround. That takes time, and it takes sowing of seeds. But the only person that you get to control is you. And there's always the wild card of the other person, and that's when we have to go deep within. I listen to Wayne Dyer a lot, and I love him. If you ever haven't heard of him, look him up. But he shares this story of a person who's in their house, and they have their keys, right? Suddenly, the power goes out, and it's dark. They're walking around, they stumble on a table, trip on the table, and they lose their keys. So they're fumbling around in the dark. It's nighttime. They can't see anything. The power is out. They're trying to find their keys. They can't find their keys. So they see outside the street light is on, right? So they say, I got an idea. Let me go outside where the street light is on. I'll look for my keys out there. So the person gets up, goes outside, and starts looking for the keys outside in the yard. He's looking all over for the keys under the street light. A neighbor comes by and says, hey, what are you looking for? He says, I'm looking for my keys. So the neighbor, dutiful neighbor, gets down on the ground, is looking for the keys with him. They can't find these keys. And suddenly the neighbor says, wait, where did you lose the keys? He says, in the house. He said, wait a minute, you're out here in the light looking for the keys when your keys are in the house? He says, yeah, I figure I'll come outside because there's light out here, and I'll find my keys under this light. What's the point? Most of the time, instead of us looking for the answers to resolve within, we go outside of ourselves to find the answer. And a lot of times the reason why we're lacking love or lacking intimacy or lacking anything is because we're lacking it internally. And we have not taken the time to go within to resolve, because the truth is that there is no one person that can resolve your need to feel loved. Right? If that were the case, how weird would that be? If it was your responsibility to make me happy, to make me fulfilled, and to make me feel loved, it's actually an impossible feat. Because if I have brokenness, and if my light has gone out within, it doesn't matter what Hassani does. He can't make me happy. But if my light is turned on within, and my love is turned up within, it doesn't matter what Hassani does. He can't make me feel unloved. And so at the end of the day, it always turns back to us.
You didn't say something there. Now, you didn't say a mouthful there.
Yeah.
And it's so critically true. Listen, guys, if you've been in this space, or if you're currently in this space, you can turn things around. See, the reality is we need to understand that love is fragile, but love can be repaired. And so in this question, when we dig into it, ultimately she's saying, well, maybe I should divorce. Maybe I should just choose to be single, as if somehow divorce is the pathway to happiness.
Yeah.
And it is not. We kind of talked about this before, but as a recap, when you're thinking about divorce, just consider the reality. People who have divorces also have symptoms of depression, self-esteem issues, actually increase after a divorce, because now you're left to deal with issues all on your own. Only half of them 5 years later experience a level of happiness. So what they're searching for really is within. I think what you just said was powerful. We oftentimes look outside of ourselves. We look to other people to do for us what we need to do for ourselves. Yeah. So if I'm broke, busted, and disgusted, and on the inside, then guess what? I'm going to attract, nothing's going to change that.
No,
I'm going to look through a lens. I'm going to look through a perspective that reinforces how I feel on the inside.
Absolutely.
And my outside world is nothing more than a manifestation of what's going on internally.
Now, that's one of the hardest concepts for people to gather. That is one of the hardest concepts for people, because we naturally want to blame everything and everybody else for our circumstances. And this is not an indictment on the person that wrote this letter in. Those are very real feelings and experiences. But when it comes to true transformation and actually getting about results, I mean, we would be in error to say, yeah, well, you know what? If they're not getting it right, then you need to go find somebody else. That's just not the truth.
It's not the truth.
Because you're going to take you, the way that you are, the conditions that you have, the mindsets that you have, to the someone else. The only thing that you could do is work on you. And when you change, Einstein said this. He's the one that discovered that when you observe something, that it actually changes. Anything that you focus on and concentrate on, you change. So when you change yourself, you force everything else around you to change, because you have become different. Nobody can treat you the same way, right? You don't treat an apple the same way you treat an orange, right? Because when you crush that orange, all that juice comes out. Have you ever seen an apple? Have you ever seen a orange juice maker? How they just throw those apples in there and it just crushes juice. I think with apples it's a little bit different, because the juice is different, right? So they have to grind it up, and then they have to juice it and strain it. You can't treat me the same if I change, because I'm different. That means that everything around me has to shift to accommodate my change, which means that you are the one that you're waiting for.
There it is.
Wow.
And I would say that if you're in a loveless relationship, understand that can be for a season. And a lot of times when we're in it, it seems like time has slowed down, and it seems like an eternity, and things will never get any better. It feels hopeless. It feels helpless. But all things can really transform. And we know that there are seasons you go through. Just like we have summer, winter, spring, and fall, we all have favorite seasons and seasons that we don't like. You can be in a season where the love has gone, but then another season can shift things around. But you determine how long you're in that season. It's what you do, the work that you do. And I think that's what's important. So I just want to let you know, it's not a permanent reality. It's a temporary situation, and all things are subject to change. Another thing, spouses who stay together often actively work on problems and work on communication and behavioral patterns, because they read a book, they go to a class, they take a seminar, they get some counseling. The point is, you don't have to be stuck believing that nothing can ever change. We have thousands of examples of couples who are willing to do something that they've never done before to turn things around. And guess what? Initially, the love feeling may not come back initially, but over a course of time, a pattern of consistency, all of a sudden your heart begins to change, those feelings begin to be restored. And one of the things that we talk about when we're counseling couples are the emotional needs of men and women.
Yes.
The point is, if I as a spouse have starved out your need, of course you're not going to feel love. And see, I can be loving you genuinely, but loving you wrong.
Right.
And I think a lot of times it means that there has to be a relational intelligence that both parties have in the relationship to know how to shift the dynamics in their interaction, so that whatever I'm doing, I'm meeting you where you're at. Because we love people the way we want to be loved, instead of loving them the way they need to be loved. But Danielle, there's all types of signs of a loveless marriage.
Absolutely. You know, I want to just say hello to a few people first before we jump into those signs, because today we're talking about, are you in a loveless marriage, right? And what are the signs of those loveless marriages that we're in, so that you can identify and get busy working on it. That's the whole key. But first, let's say hi to JG. Good morning, Facebook user. We need you to put your name in there. Torre Love, good to see you. Dee Danielle Moss, hey. Cynthia Wade, Yvette, hey, good to see you. Cynthia, Yvette again. Yosha, good to see you. MJ, Vashan, good to see everybody. Guys, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Make sure that when you come on, you say good morning and let us know where you're from. We'd love to call you out and find out all the places. People are tuning in from all over the world, and it's so cool to see a new corner of the earth popping up here. But we're talking about, are you in a loveless marriage? And there are some signs, and we want to jump into the first one. And one of the first ones is if you're not having sex anymore. I mean, that's a big one. There's really think about this. If you're in a sexless marriage, sex is something that you are supposed to only share with that person. We share so many other facets of our personality and life with everyone, right? Certain friends get my comedy side, certain friends get my benevolent side, certain friends get my supportive, cry on my shoulder side. I mean, I share so many sides of myself with everyone, right? I'm a mother, there's the parenting side, all of that, right? There's the business, entrepreneurial side, there's the coaching, client side, and then there's the intimacy side with my husband, and I only share that with him. I only share my body with him. And so if you are in a sexless marriage, that is an indication that things have turned south.
Yeah, when we talk about the top 5 things that couples struggle with is sex, communication, finances, in-laws, and parenting. And sex is at the top of the list. And you know that there's a problem when couples stop touching, because that's one of the, when you initiate a relationship, you're holding hands and you're hugging. And then once you develop that relationship and you say, I do, now you're engaged in sexual intimacy. And that's the only thing that separates this relationship from every other relationship on the planet. So if you're in that space, it's an indication, most likely, that there may not be anything physically wrong, but there's something emotionally or relationally wrong that needs to be dealt with so that this can naturally, because I think one of the things she said in that letter is, I have sex, but I feel like I'm forcing it. I have no desire for it. There's no connection, because the intimacy is missing in the sexuality. That's the difference.
Absolutely. The second one is you have divorce fantasies, and I share this a lot with our groups about our minds, how we have this brilliant, powerful mind that God has given us and he has created within us, and it could literally rule us if we don't rule it, right? And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be the ones ruling and governing this body, right? Through the spirit. But instead, what we do is we let our minds run rampant and create fantasies and ideas. And that is where you're sowing these mental and emotional seeds that grow. We don't seem to think or seem to understand how powerful our thoughts are. That every single thing that you've ever done, every accomplishment that you've ever made started somewhere as a seed in your mind. And what you do is you water that seed, you start thinking about it, you start planning it, you start, seeing yourself doing it before you actually walk it out and do it. You saw yourself doing it in your mind a million times. Think about when you graduated and got that master's, you saw yourself walk across that stage many times before you actually walked across that stage. And that is the power of your mind. So what ends up happening is that you are now, because you feel so disconnected and you're lacking the intimacy that Sonny is talking about, now you start to find or create that intimacy for yourself through imagination. You make up the imaginary husband, the imaginary home, the imaginary perfect life, the imaginary perfect children, the imaginary perfect love life and sex and all these things. And all that's happening right here until you literally walk outside and walk into the arms of another person. It's very dangerous ground.
And then you realize that everything you imagine isn't real.
It's a nightmare.
Straight up and down.
Yeah.
And so in essence, what you're doing is you're experiencing the experience before you experience it. So many people have mentally and emotionally left before they physically left. And to your point, the imagination has taken them there. And then when you're hit with the hard reality, wow, this is not all I thought. And then you begin to live in regret because, man, I should have stayed where I was, put in the work. And that's one of the biggest regrets of people who actually get a divorce. Actually, 1/3 of them regret not putting in the necessary effort to restore the relationship and wish they had reconciled. That's why
that percent again?
It's 1/3 of all people who initiate the divorce. The ones who initiate it oftentimes regret what they have done and wish they had put in the work to restore the relationship. That's why we see that there's a growing percentage of people who remarry
it's so
the
true.
spouse that
because
they divorced.
You get with someone else under the wrong foundation totally. You think about that, right? Those that initiate the divorce, and then they wish they had never done it. They wish they put all that energy and effort into their spouse, because what ends up happening is, number one, maybe you stepped out on your spouse in the first place to initiate this relationship, wrong foundation. And we already know that how something begins is a great indication of how it's going to end. And then secondly, once you get into that relationship, you realize that this person is just as flawed, just as jacked up, maybe worse than you, and definitely worse than your spouse, right? Who you have built so much of a foundation with. And so they now are in the situation.
Yeah.
It's too late. Now you've moved on and you're sitting back thinking, wow, I wish I had done something different. That's key for those of you out there that are thinking that the grass is greener on the other side. It is not.
It isn't.
Because when you get close with a magnifying glass, you find out there's grasshoppers and spiders and ants and all kinds of issues in there, and the ones that you weren't familiar with. I'll never forget when we moved to Costa Rica. Hassani and I spent 2 years in Costa Rica. And, you know, every place has bugs, but we weren't ready for those bugs. We weren't ready for those spiders that knew taekwondo. When you tried to kill them, they were like, boom, you know, and we were like, oh my God. We didn't know which snakes were dangerous in your backyard because we don't have snakes in our backyard here.
Yeah, it was a serious situation.
Right. So there's always stuff that you don't know. There's always things off the radar. So what do? You work on the things that are on screen, that are on radar, and make those things better.
Boom.
Number 3, you minimize each other's concerns. That's a big one. I mean, that's probably a pretty strong issue when somebody feels unloved.
And we see that in counseling all the time. So one person is giving their opinion, and then the other one responds, well, that's your opinion. I disagree. Like, everything you say, I disagree about. I can't acknowledge or honor anything, any perspective you have. And it really shuts your spouse down. It's just like, well, I can't have an opinion. I can't have anything to say. You minimize, you don't validate, you don't acknowledge, you don't anything. And that creates more of the disconnect, right? And that's how we go from soulmate to roommate. Because I feel like there's no alignment, there's no commonality, there's no agreement. When couples just agree to disagree, trust me, when you start going down that path, then you find that there are incalculable numbers of things that you will just make a decision not to agree about. And you cannot be on the same page, moving in the same direction, accomplishing goals, finding fulfillment in your relationship if you don't agree. And minimizing is one of the ways to do that.
We could just agree to disagree. How annoying.
It is. It's just like
do
really?
we always have to agree to disagree? The power of agreement is so strong. Why would we decide to agree to disagree when the power is in getting into alignment? What does the scripture say about the 3-chord strand?
Yeah, it's not easily broken. That with 2 people, it's pretty strong, but a 3-chord strand, when you've got an agreement between you and your spouse, and you have an agreement to the word of God, there's an amplification of power that takes place in that level of agreement. And it doesn't matter what you decide to do, the power of agreement will cause it to come to pass.
He's not wrong. And we call it the marriage mastermind, right? When we get into agreement and lock our eyes on anything, stuff happens. So why would you agree to disagree? Why would you agree to get out of alignment? Just think about that. Number 4, all your time feels like alone time with your spouse, right? So no matter if you're sitting together or you're apart, you just feel alone because you don't have anything to talk about. You have nothing to connect on. You don't share your life. Everything is cliche. You don't know what's going on in each other's lives apart from each other because there's zero intimacy. So you just feel alone. They're just there to pay the bills, to warm the bed, to hold its space, but there's no connection.
It's called physical proximity. So we could be in the same room, sitting on the same couch, but I'm on my phone, you're flipping through channels, we're in the same physical space, but we are miles apart. We're in 2 different worlds, completely disconnected. And we use the power of social media, technology, phone, everything else to connect with other people and not spending the time to connect with ourselves. And that is a major problem.
And then number 5, the fun is gone, right? And we talked about this, I think, one of our last shows about how we were on a cruise, the cruise to Philadelphia or something like that, and we saw a couple, and they had zero connection. They were not talking to each other. They weren't looking at each other, and it was just like, oh my God, that's the last thing that I want to do. And so you're no longer planning date nights, which is a key part of what we tell people to do. You know, plan those work days and plan those date nights because that's where all the connection happens. Think about where you first met. All you did was date. You could not wait to get together, to put on some cologne and perfume and smell good and look good in front of each other. And now you're not even doing that. You don't play games together. You don't talk. You don't connect. the fun is gone. And what happens after that is you start looking for other outlets to have fun.
And so some of the questions that you want to ask yourself if you feel like you're in a loveless relationship, and oftentimes when we feel that way, we're looking at how our spouse is not showing up, what our spouse is not doing, and we're not taking a look at ourselves. You kind of have to look at both. But one of the questions that you have to ask yourself, why did you fall in love in the first place? What was it about your spouse? What was it about your connection that allowed you to fall in love in the first place? Sometimes reminding yourself of what that was and then assessing, do we still have that or do we not? Where did we kind of fall off the beaten path? And where can we get back on track to bring back that thing? Because there's some amazing qualities that you loved initially that then became the very source of your frustration after you said, I do. Now, your spouse never changed, right? That quality is still there. And so what is it about you that makes you think and feel different about the very thing that caused you to fall in love in the first place? And then the second thing is, are those qualities still there? Now, some people know how to show up in the dating phase, and then after they say I do, they're like, well, we're good now. I don't have to put in the work. I don't have to do that. I did that to win you, but I don't necessarily need to do that to keep you. And we always say, however you initiate a relationship is how you want to maintain that relationship. So a fair assessment, are those qualities still there? If they're not, it would be a great idea to write down what those qualities were so that when you engage in a conversation, you can bring them back up and see how you can incorporate them back into that relationship. And another question you really want to ask yourself is, what do you truly want from your spouse? See, a lot of times we know what we don't want, but we really don't know what we do want. When we work with couples and say, let's set up some goals, some relational goals, some people really struggle. They're like, man, I just can't, and that's what it is. It's just like,
they can't think of it.
Right, because we have a tendency to focus on what we don't want. And whatever you focus on, you bring more of it into your life. And so when you focus on what you do want, things begin to shift and change.
It's so true. I wish people would just grasp this. You know, the Bible says, I know I'm always breaking out with the Bible, but I mean, it is the most wise book ever created. I know there's other teachings out there, and there's a lot of wisdom in all of them, no doubt. But to me, that scripture is so powerful because there's a scripture in there that says that he uses the simple things to confound the wise.
There it is.
The simple things. It's simple, y'all. If you don't want to keep attracting these miserable circumstances in your life, become someone new. Become someone new. When Hassani and I finally got it together, it was when we discovered that we needed to focus on ourselves. It was an aha moment because for both of us, all we were doing was going like this, point at me and saying, there was no concept in my brain that I had anything to do with our problems. He was pointing at me, I was pointing at him. When we figured it out that it was me and my stuff that was bringing heartache and issue into this relationship, and that if I worked on me and became the best version of me, it would force everything to change. Boom. It changed. Hassani had the same experience, and it actually happened the other way around, right? Because you actually initiated the change.
I did.
And he started, and I was not with it. I was not with it because I was in my head, you. And he started changing anyway. He ignored me, my idiosyncrasies, all my attitude, my rolling of the eyes, my dismissiveness, my apathy. Mm-hmm. And apathy takes time to create, right? It's like hardened. Apathy is so bad that like you just don't care one way or another. Like I don't even see you coming or going. And then all of a sudden, because he kept on tapping at the rocks that were surrounding me in my little protective cave, they started to crumble. And I was like, he's not the same person. He looks a little different. Let me get back in my cave and make sure everything's all right. But he kept chiseling and chipping away. And next thing I know, he was different. He no longer reacted to me the same. He didn't respond to me the same, which forced me to shift the way I responded. So guys, if you want to see change, get busy changing.
Yeah. We have a couple comments, powerful comments. Kia says, manifesting your reality is a real thing. Speak it into existence
Yes,
and
Kia.
work for it.
Yes.
There's something about the power of words. And I'm telling you, we typically speak the things we don't want.
We do.
We speak fear. We speak doubt. We speak failure. But there's power in your tongue. There's life in your tongue. And just as you can speak life to your life, you can speak death to your life.
Yeah.
Just as you can speak life to your marriage, you can speak death to your marriage. So listen, if you're in a bad place, if you're in a loveless marriage, stop talking about it. Because when you speak, those words travel into the universe, they take shape, they take form, they come back into your life with the possibility of becoming a reality. And then all of a sudden, boom, you have more of the very thing that you've just spoken because you've created it. You've created it through your words. So sometimes you just got to get silent. Sometimes you just got to close your mouth and allow God to just work on the inside of you. Speak the opposite of the facts. Listen, the facts may be you're in a loveless relationship, but the truth is that there's power and transformation if you do what's necessary to turn yourself around, thus turning your relationship around.
Well, you know what, Hassani? You done said a word. That's what they said in the old folks church. You done said a word, and y'all need to write that down. That is huge and that is powerful. And you know what? I wish we had time to go into all the comments and questions, but I just want you to know we reserve Fridays for Q&A. And we get up here and we answer your questions one after another. Also, you can reach out to us on our Facebook page. Send a message with your question. We will highlight that question. You can send video questions to info@couplesacademy.com and even letters. As you can see, we will read every one of them and we will answer all of your burning questions on Fridays.
Couple commercials before we leave the show. We'll be right back to close out. Stay right there. This is the Couples Academy Show. Sign up today for the Better Marriage Club and receive exclusive access to the private Facebook group to get your questions answered and your problems solved. Access to our marriage library of live seminars. Watch the Couples Academy Daily Show. Call the help hotline for laser coaching. Get our weekly action guides and receive a private one-on-one call with one of our marriage coaches. To join the Better Marriage Club, simply text MARRIAGE to 973-490-4668. Join today. Your marriage deserves it. All right, guys, listen, we're headed towards the end of our show, but this was a great topic. We were just getting started. We're just covering the signs. There's so many questions that you have.
Time goes so fast.
It goes by so fast. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a part 2 on tomorrow. We want you to tune in. We want you to stay there because we have a lot of great information. Listen, before we go, Last Chance Weekend, it is on the 29th through the 31st of January. Just click the link in the description. Many of you have been calling up. We have a couple spaces left. We try to keep it small and intimate so that we can have true transformation and restoration with a small group of couples. But anyway, see you in the morning, 9 o'clock. Love you guys. Boom.
Bye.
If you would like to be a guest on our show, or if you're interested in one of our restoration programs, contact us today at couplesacademy.org.